Okay, welcome to part 3 of this little 3 video series that I'm doing discussing how I traded SNGX today. So, if you guys haven't checked out part 1 and part 2, just go ahead and click on your screen. You should see a little area where you can click on and go and view part 1 and part 2 before you go ahead and view part 3. But part 1 basically discussed when you can chase along and actually have it be a good chase. And part 2 talks about making a bad decision and how to recover from it and prevent it from becoming catastrophic. So part 3 will talk about how the stock changed from a long bias to short bias and how I was able to comfortably short this stock with minimal risk of this thing going against me. Of course, like I said, with any strategy, it's not always 100%, but given the way the chart was forming and how the tape was reading, I had some fairly high confidence that I can pull off this trade. And even then, I did small size to mitigate the effects of any random move like news or something that can go against me and blow my profits on the day. So you can kind of see that since the last video, part 2, I was able to recover a good amount of profits on the long side. As you see, the stock made a new high at 508. I'm just not going to make a video about it because A, I don't have time to break this video into like 5 or 6 parts. And B, I've already covered a similar topic on my BSPM washout long video. As you can see, the stock washed from 508 to 455 in one candle. And I was able to get in there with 10,000 shares and had to hold this thing actually somewhat uncomfortably. As you can see, 5 consecutive candles where it kind of went sideways, but I was able to get out at 480 and make almost 3 grand on that trade alone. So yeah, it was not the easiest trade in the world, but it was comfortably holding against that previous high of day around 450s, 450, 460s. So I was able to get a trade off of that and recover some good profits, and I was also able to make a micro short against that after that big drop just before 10:30, that big red candle. Got a little bit of a micro pop, covered that micro wash, and recovered about $400 off of that $2,200 loss that you guys saw in part 2. So we pick it up here at 10:44.25. And let's just see what happens. So basically the stock is kind of teetering around VWAP. And you can kind of notice this is where I actually labeled the stock as no man's land. This is where pretty much the stock can go either way. And as you can see, it's actually holding VWAP and is actually trying to make a push back to becoming long bias. So at this moment, I'm just sitting on my hands. If this stock breaks over 480 and makes a beeline toward 5, then maybe I'm going to go back in for a long. Or maybe it ends up rejecting in that 480 area and ends up double topping or whatever and ends up cracking VWAP and ends up being a short. So right now it's pretty much a 50-50 trade. I'm not going to get in it. I'm not going to ruin my day. I'm already up 6 grand on the day. No real reason to give back even a couple bucks. So right here, it's pretty much in a tight range. Just give it a second and see what it does. So here, stock just grinding along in the 460s, trying to fight its way back toward that 480 area where that top was. And you see that big dump, boom, 440, 30-cent washout. Could have probably longed it here for a couple bucks, but at this point I felt kind of sketched out because the range was getting kind of tight, and you can kind of see this stock kind of dropped, and I ended up getting in here at 440, 2,500 shares, covering for a quick $200. Quick scalp there. Now you see the stock now cracking a little bit harder below VWAP. It's becoming more and more of an obvious short at this point. 420 is about to go down. Boom. 417s. So now the stock has made a pretty substantial move below VWAP. About 30 cents below VWAP. Unlike before when it was in quote-unquote no man's land, it was just kind of hanging around there, give or take, plus or minus 10 cents. Now we've made a pretty nice move below VWAP. Now I'm going to look to short pops. And looking at short pops with VWAP as risk. Again, it's always about having those defined risk levels. You got to have defined risk. Then you can actually comfortably get into a trade and stop out if you have to. So right now the stock's kind of teetering around this 420 area. Gonna look to be shorting pops again toward VWAP Also that support level around 435, now acting probably as resistance. Trying to get in here at 430, got filled a couple shares. And you can kind of see also this stock is struggling to bounce. This thing just dropped from 465 down to 415, a 50-cent drop, and it's struggling to bounce, you know, even 10-15 cents. So that's a sign of weakness. You normally, if this stock had some sort of buying pressure left to push it back up, you would see a very quick VWAP test. Even if it ends up rejecting, you would probably see the last batch of buyers try to push this stock, you know, with the last ditch effort to see if they can kind of prop this thing back and save it. But you don't even see this thing going back toward VWAP around 445. Kind of tested there around 430, but not really anything substantial to get this thing back. So right now you're kind of noticing that the stock is weak. It can't bounce, can't get back above VWAP. I can comfortably hold this 430, only 900 shares. Again, I'm trying to just downsize. 2,500 shares started. In the last video, you saw me do 5,000 shares. Again, as time goes on, you want to downsize, protect yourself from a bunch of random market events. As you notice, the volume is lower and everything gets sketchier and sketchier and sketchier. So just gotta protect yourself. Just doing 2,500 shares. Still got that open order in there at 430. Let's see if I get filled. Again, stock still struggling to bounce back above 430. Very key. When a stock is supposed to bounce and it's not, you know that there's something that's holding it down. It is propping that 420, however, so I am wary of that. But with the 430 entry, not really that concerned. Again, we got a seller at 430 kind of holding it down. So it's kind of stuck in this 10-cent range. I did fill with the rest of my 2,500 shares. Again, my stop is at VWAP. Again, with 2,500 shares, not the end of the world if I take a loss here after being up 6,200 bucks on the day. So now you're basically seeing it's a battle of buyers at 420 versus sellers at 430. Who's going to lose? Remember that tug of war analogy that I always mention in my other videos. Buyers versus sellers. That's basically all the market is about in a nutshell. Right? Supply, demand. Buyers and sellers. So right now we got the buyers at 420. We got the sellers at 430. Who's going to blink first? With my entry at 430, pretty much one of the best possible entries you can have in this situation with a 10-cent buffer, I can comfortably hold through all this. Now, if I chase 420s, it might be a different story, right? But I have 430s I can comfortably hold. Try to get out there at 421, not going to get filled. You'll see me take out that order in a second when I see this thing still struggle in the 430s. Tries to make a push above 430 for a split second. And you'll see this thing kind of gets slammed right back down. There we go. The sellers at 430s comes back. The ask comes back down. And there we go. We get the wash. Not quite teetering just yet, but we still see this thing struggling. Every single time it tries to go toward 430, push above 430. It was above 430 for just a couple of seconds, and it just gets slammed right back down. Now watch out for the washout. The stock is still a tug-of-war battle. 420s versus 430s. Again, with my 420 entry, I'm still able to hold this thing. So let's see what happens. Watch this thing kind of drop. Any second now, we're going to see a pretty nasty rug pull. And big offer at 427. And I think it's coming up. kind of a big game of patience here, but patience actually works here because of a defined risk level. Stock unable to bounce. If this thing was grinding against me, obviously that would be a different story, or if I had a bad entry. But now 7 candles in a row where it hasn't gone below 420. But again, the entry is keeping me in. Again, teetering on the edge of losing those 420s. $420 still hanging around. Volume kind of going down drain here. And we'll see in a second. Yeah, it's a lot easier to hold when you got that cushion. Here we go, boom. And I'm all out. You see that washout? You see that rug pull? Cover into the wash, lock in your profits, quick 500 bucks. So small size, easy defined risk levels, stock can't claim VWAP, cover into the wash. There you go, take your profits, and that's it. Done with the trade. A relatively stress-free short on the backside. Stock changed from long bias to short bias. Yes, it did kind of hang around a little bit longer than I expected for 7 candles, which is 21 minutes of watching paint dry. But nonetheless, patience actually works here because of the defined risk levels, the small size, and the good entry. Take profits on the wash, guys. Easy 500 bucks. And no stress at all, pretty much. So that being said, guys, hopefully you guys understood the difference between shorting the stock on the front side and shorting the stock on the back side, how you're able to comfortably hold here versus trying to short on the front side and holding a grind against you. Hopefully you guys get a good, better idea of that. So that being said, guys, this concludes this little 3-part series of how I traded SNGX today. Of course, if you enjoy this content, like, share, spread the word, and subscribe. And of course, we'll see you guys next time.